Hi there, this is Dino Wright. In time for our screening of Boyz N the Hood in 4K at Steel Stacks in Bethlehem on November 13th, here is a rebroadcast of our original episode on Boyz N the Hood. You don't want to miss a screening, as we'll have a throwback set by DJ Arm18 at 6:45, and then a really terrific panel discussion about the film after the screening, featuring Ali Akarsesmi, a filmmaker and professor from Kutztown University, Andrew McIntosh, a sociology professor from Northampton Community College, whom you already know as DJ Arm18, Bernard James, a filmmaker and co-curator of the Black Film Then and Now series at Steel Stacks, and Nandini Sikand, a filmmaker, professor, and artist from Lafayette College. Get your tickets at steelstacks.org. Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, where three old heads put their old heads together to vibe on some of the most memorable or forgettable hip hop themed movies of all time. And here's HHMC with your HHMCs, Boogie, JB, and Dino Wright. Season 4, Episode 1, Boyz N the Hood. Written and directed by John Singleton and produced by Steve Nicolaitis. Released in 1991 and featuring Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., Morris Chestnut, and Laurence Fishburne. We'll answer the question, which of the boys can survive and which can thrive in the mean streets of South Central LA?
Boyz N the Hood is a coming-of-age drama which sees a young boy, Trey, sent to live with his father, Furious Styles, in the rough-and-tumble South Central LA neighborhood of Crenshaw. While Furious instills proper values and respect in Trey, his friends Doughboy and Ricky don't have the same kind of support system and are drawn into the drug and gang culture with tragic results. Boogie, what are your initial thoughts of Boyz N the Hood?
Boyz N the Hood is the quintessential South Central film. It's the first film from John Singleton, first major film from him, and the first of his South Central quote-unquote hood trilogy films. I think that it's super poignant, and it touches on a lot of topics. You got street violence, drug dealing, gang culture. There's police brutality. It touches on gentrification of the hood as well as misogyny and single parent households, with an absentee father and the repercussions that can occur when that takes place. Even though I know the ending of the movie, it's always one of those movies that whenever I see it on, I have to stop and pause what I'm doing, and I pay attention to it because it tells a story of what can happen if you're not careful. And also, even though you have a hopeful situation in terms of the character Ricky and his ability to play football and potentially get out, chance occurrences of being in the wrong place at the wrong time can sometimes have some really ugly results and consequences. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this movie. This is one of those films that I highly recommend for people to watch if they want to get an insight on the street culture of Los Angeles and South Central. And it's sad because a lot of these occurrences in the movie still occur. I mean, we do get just fairly recently hip hop artist PNB Rock, murdered in Los Angeles, and it's very sad to see situations like that occur. And also, we have the instance of police brutality that still occur. So I think John Singleton was ahead of his time as far as bringing these stories to the forefront, so that not only can the world see what's going on, but also the people that live in Hollywood that are oblivious to the situations that are going on can kind of look over their shoulder and say, oh, wow, this is what's going on in our own backyard, and pay attention to it.
Yeah, Dino Wright, what are your thoughts initially?
I had never seen this before, one of those movies, and it was equal or maybe even better than Do the Right Thing. The characters were very human. It was multidimensional, and the acting actually met the level of the writing. These characters were written so well, and they really brought great acting to it, and a lot of them were their first movie roles. It's like amazing that he got these performances out of these new actors, and the whole thing was just they turned into stars, right? So many people, like we've seen so many other movies now in this podcast too. They got their start here. It's like wow, a lot of them like had been working, but they really became more prominent thanks to this movie. And this might be my favorite one that we've seen so far.
Yeah, this was incredible. I had seen it once or twice, but years ago, shortly after it came out, and to rewatch it, I was just enthralled by it. It holds up. I mean, this could be a top 20 film of all time, perhaps. I'm just astounded by how young John Singleton was when he made this film. He was 24 years old. Think about what we were doing at age 24. I
Nothing
mean,
this important.
yeah. Youngest director ever to be nominated by an Oscar. So kudos to the late, great John Singleton.
Yeah.
Actually, you did a comparison with Do the Right Thing, and I was reading up. 2 years after Spike Lee was passed over for nomination for Do the Right Thing, he didn't get it. Singleton became the first African American to earn a Best Director nomination for Boyz N the Hood. The character development, the cinematography was all on point, and it's a teaching moment, and it's poignant, like you said, Boogie. So this one started out with the statistic of 1 out of every 22 Black Americans will be murdered, which is just jaw-dropping. And most will be at the hands of another Black person. So then you're talking about Black on Black crime. Like you said, Dinah, right? Ice Cube hadn't done any acting, right? For John Singleton to reach out to him. So John Singleton, I believe, went to USC for film school, which is a top program. And for him to reach out to Ice Cube, who was really knee deep into the success of NWA, and to bring him into this role was just remarkable. And he nailed it.
When I was thinking about the characters and how this movie was, it was Ice Cube that you really saw how he became a Hollywood star, because he has the acting chops to do a role like this that wasn't just one dimensional. He could have been just portrayed as a thug, but there was dimension to his character, and he actually did. Yeah. I mean, he and his brother would fight, but he actually did love his brother and wanted to protect him, and he had levels to him. So, and amazing to think like that was his first movie. Wow, what a talent!
Yeah, definitely knocked it out the park. I mean, toe to toe with any seasoned vet in a film. His portrayal of Doughboy in this movie is top notch. And like you said, it was definitely layers. Like he was definitely not just a street thug. Like he was compassionate. He was loyal, compassionate. He was strong-willed as well. And it was very realistic and he wasn't a good person, but you kind of want to root for him anyway, because you could still see those good qualities in him. Like he's that guy, like all right, you know what? He's not good, but there's something about him that he can do better if he just applied himself. And you want to root for him to do better. As you see, unfortunately, at the end of the movie, he definitely, he didn't make it. He was also, he was murdered as well. Became another statistic, unfortunately. And that's the sad thing. And it's like you see these guys and you know that there's something more to them, but they're so wrapped up that, it takes them under.
The character of Doughboy is very interesting. He was the street smart one between him and his brother Kenny. He was protective of him. In fact, when they were walking down by the tracks and they came upon the other group of, I guess, almost like a gang, and they stole his football. They stole Kenny's football. Doughboy was the one that stood up football. For him. Ricky, I'm sorry. Ricky's football. Yep. So he fought to get the football back. He wasn't afraid to back down from anybody. And I think what was really driving some of Doughboy's motive was Ricky being the one that had the aspirations to be a football player, was definitely favored by their mother. And he internalized that. You could see that when they would fight, she would slap Doughboy, like get your hands off him and everything. And In fact, if you fast forward, at the end when Ricky was shot and killed, her initial thought was that Doughboy had done it, and she's blaming him and punching him, and he internalized all that, and I think that kind of made him the way he was.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like you could definitely see him crying out for attention that wasn't being bestowed to him. Yeah, there was definitely favoritism in those situations between Doughboy and Ricky. And
Yeah.
I think if he was getting that attention from the mother as well, might have had a different outcome.
Yeah. Like I said, the synopsis, it's like they had the single parent issues. I mean, Trey did also. So Trey was, well, not single parent, but separated, right? And then Furious, played by Laurence Fishburne. I mean, what an amazing character Laurence Fishburne was. I thought he should have been nominated for supporting actor, but he was passed over as well. What a great father figure, the rough and tumble neighborhood. But the first night that Trey goes to live with him, there's a break-in in the house. The way that Singleton had that build up with the dripping faucet and the intensity of it and the shooting, and then that leads to the tension with the cop that came. There was a black cop. He took forever to arrive, and then he states this one less N-word on the street if you would have gotten him, and it's like, well, what's going on here? Like it kind of brought a lot of drama for sure.
I read that Singleton shot this in order, and I also had that reaction about the dripping faucet. The tension building was really great. to read that, oh yeah, this was like when he was still figuring out things, and by the end, like, wow, this was your first movie.
Yeah, I was listening to some other podcasts about it and doing some research. It's like he was fresh out of film school, so like I guess he was using these techniques and he used them to a T, and it was masterful.
Masterful's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, so dramatic. Yeah. And back to Furious, Laurence Fishburne. He taught Trey the life lessons, and he kept him straight and narrow as much as he could. You see, he was the one that was working at the mall and trying to do, trying to live a noble life. The famous scene where they're fishing and he's teaching him, how to be a man, and the rights and wrongs and everything like that. It was impressive.
Yeah. Ice Cube scenes, Doughboy scenes, and Furious' style scenes. Those were really gripping. Like, I was glued. Anytime they were on the screen, I'm like, ooh, this is something to pay attention to.
Yeah. He just stole the scenes, and there was a lot of gems that he would drop, and things that people are starting to talk about now, or he was talking about it back then in that movie. Just a good overall solid character, well respected in the neighborhood, and it was good to see a positive role model despite everything going on. Usually, sometimes the father is portrayed in a negative light, or not portrayed at all, non-existent in the case of, Doughboy and Ricky. So it was good that there was a counterbalance to show, hey, despite the parents being separated, he's still a positive, influence in Trey's life, and there to help him become a man. I think even the point to the mother, portrayed by Angela Bassett, that she wanted him, wanted Trey to go live with him, because she's like, I brought him this far, but he needs his father to kind of buckle him down a little bit and show him how to become a man. I can help, but you're a man. He needs a man in his life, and I understand that we're not together, but I want you to take care of him from this point, just to make sure that he gets that other side of the coin upbringing as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the term gentrification earlier, and wow, I mean, that's become so much more popular. This film was from like 91. There's the scene where Furious is speaking in front of the empty lot in front of the billboard, and this is the first time I pretty much heard that word, and he explains it in such a clear way to Trey and Ricky and a lot of the folks from the neighborhood. One of them, including Grady from Sanford and Son, was one of the neighborhood guys. And he explains it. It's like, it's called gentrification. And I have a quote here. It's like, it's what happens when the property value of a certain area is brought down. He's like, you listening? You bring the property value down. They can buy the land at a lower price. They move all the people out, raise the property value, and sell it at a profit. He said, now what we need to do is keep everything in our neighborhood, everything black owned with black money, just like the Jews, the Italians, the Mexicans, and the Koreans do. And then he was talking about, I think it was actually the old man, I think Grady, talking about, he's like, ain't nobody from outside bringing down the property value. It's these folks shooting each other and selling the crack rock. So he's saying, oh, wait a second. No, we're all doing it to ourselves. And then Furious was like, well, how do you think the crack rock gets into this country? We don't own any planes. We don't own no ships. We're not the people flying and floating it all in here. Why is there a gun shop on almost every corner of this community? So it really gets everybody thinking. And it's very provocative, but it's poignant, where it's like, wow, they really want to. It's kind of like the odds are so stacked against us. There's all the liquor stores on the corner. There's the gun shops. They want us to kill each other. Is pretty much what he's saying. We have to overcome that. We're behind the eight ball. So that was really a great speech he had there.
Absolutely. That was one of my favorite scenes of the movie. Yeah.
Anytime you can put Whitman Mayo in a scene. Grady.
But it's so funny. We've had so many, Luana Page cameos. It's about time we got somebody else from Sanford and Sons. Just a little Grady action.
We haven't seen Aunt Esther in a while. We might as well see Grady.
Yeah, one more thing about Furious Styles, played by Laurence Fishburne, he was like a mortgage broker, and you see the scene when he's talking to Trey when they're fishing, and he was talking about his time in the military, in the army. And some people say that this is the same character, possibly from Apocalypse Now, Laurence Fishburne's character. So if you go back and look at that, this could be the evolution of his character, which was interesting.
I always like these little inter movie kind of connections that maybe
don't exist but are fun to think about. Are always kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's possible if you put two and two together. And let me just go back to the cinematography. I believe there was like almost John Singleton was paying homage to Stand By Me with the train track scene, finding the body. There was a kind of double thing there. Although this was a much shorter walk than the boys in Stand By Me and finding the body. But also, like you said, when Doughboy vanishes, that's like, I think, River Phoenix. The way that they make him vanish at the end.
Yeah, I read that too. Like it was homage to, or
he used that same thing. So he kind of was a hat tip to Stand By Me.
I don't think there was a false note in this movie at all. And I think maybe it's recency bias, but I feel like Do the Right Thing had a few scenes that didn't have to be in the movie. And so it wasn't like completely ironclad. And I think this movie, like, there was no fat in this movie. It was so powerful and consistent through the entire movie.
Yeah, and I heard a comparison of, so John Singleton and Spike Lee, they rose to prominence around the same time. So they're always kind of compared to each other. And the comparison I heard was that Spike Lee, as we mentioned when we talked about The Right Thing, left some things open-ended and wanted to spark debate. And he was great at that. Whereas John Singleton was more or less, I want to take you into this world and tell you the story of how it is. This is almost like if NWA was on film. And that's why Ice Cube was such a natural to play this role. It's like, this is how it is in South Central. This is the true story. Here's how the characters evolve. And this is the tragic events right there. Whereas Spike Lee was more kind of open-ended.
It's definitely complementary.
Right. Yeah.
They fit together.
For sure. Yeah.
I think it's fun to think of Cowboy Curtis. And then he goes from Cowboy Curtis to Furious Styles. But wow. And I read that John Singleton worked at Pee-wee's Playhouse as a production assistant and security guard. And that's how he met Laurence Fishburne. So you never know. These connections are wild.
Wow.
Yeah. I was even so impressed by the child actors in the beginning when it was the small Trey and teaching the class about Africa. And then he starts to fight. And I'm like, wow, these kids are just so great.
Yeah. The kid that played Doughboy at age 10 and Little Trey.
Yeah.
It was very good.
I was reading and I saw that backtrack to Ice Cube real quick in his casting for Doughboy, that he was John Singleton's first choice to play Doughboy. Like he just kept approaching Ice Cube after concerts or after performances and Ice Cube, of course, was reluctant. It's like, I'm not an actor. But John Singleton finally encouraged him to audition and take a screen test. He performed just as well as John Singleton knew that he would, and was cast as Doughboy. They developed a friendship, and John Singleton actually was the one who started encouraging Ice Cube to write screenplays based off of his writing of his lyrics, which resulted in Friday. How about that?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. This was the source material for all these great things that happened afterwards, like Friday and the rest of his trilogy and all that. Wow.
Yeah.
When the gang kind of bumps Ricky and he confronts Ferris from the gang, and the Doughboy is the one that stands up and says, "Is there a problem here?" The machine guns kind of blast out. Trey and Ricky kind of get pulled over too, and then there's that black cop threatening them with the gun to the throat, and you see the dramatic breakdown of Trey. Like Trey's so conflicted. He's trying to live this straight narrow life, but is all this pressure on him, and he starts crying in front of his girlfriend Brandy, and that was a really powerful scene too. And then you see Furious and ex-wife Reva talking about Trey's future and him moving in with Brandy and things like that. Ricky sees the Army commercial on TV and is intrigued by it. And then, there's the fight between Ricky and Doughboy. There's so much that kind of happens. And Trey convinces Ricky, like, don't go into the military because his father was like, it's not for us and everything like that. So much to this character development and what these kids are going through. It's wild.
I agree.
They had to grow up really young.
Yeah.
Dealing with like full-on adult situations as kids, not out of high school yet.
Yeah.
That scene when Trey breaks down in front of Brandy at her house, he was holding it together so well, and then came out, and you kind of feel that because you get threatened like that. And, you feel that power dynamic with the cop, the self-loathing cop. Totally relate to how he reacted to that, and how he had to hold himself together until he found a place where he could let it out. Well done.
Yeah.
And there was a whole lot of tension between folks in the neighborhood and the police at that time as well. And a lot of it, making no excuse for it, but a lot of it was based off the violence of the area. Police officers weren't sure who pulled a trigger at them and who wouldn't. So they walked into every situation and they were just overzealous with their handling of situations that could have been de-escalated pretty simply. Simple questions here and there, and everyone could have been on their way. But they were just really, really nasty and rude, and they developed such a bad reputation. It was a rite of passage. Say, all right, okay, at what point are you going to come in contact with the cops and get roughed up? It's going to happen, but at what point is it going to happen to you? It's going to happen. That was Trey's, I guess, that might have been his first time having that situation like that occur. And once it finally happens to you, you don't know what to do, because at any point, he could have been dead. All it takes is a misjudgment from that police officer. I thought he was going to do this, or whatever, and he could have overreacted and killed him. So that's and just like you said, there's a power dynamic where you're powerless in that situation. When he was finally out of that situation, we had a Mount St. Helens type moment where he just erupted with emotion. I can definitely relate to that situation. I mean, I've never been to the extent of what he dealt with, but when you don't know what's going to happen, and when you're finally out of that situation, you break down. I've broken down before, not to that extent, but I've had moments where I've encountered police officers, and after they were gone, I just really sat in the car and cried. Or I got home and parked my car and just sat there and cried, like, thank God it didn't go in a different direction than when it did. It was just a interaction, and I got home. So every time I see that scene, it touches me.
Yeah, police brutality. You think of the timing of this movie. if you look back, the one of the most visible incidents back then, Rodney King, happened in March of 1991. This movie was released in July of 1991. So this was definitely at the peak of when this came to light. Obviously, it still happens. We've seen so many instances, but this is really on everybody's mind. And like you said, I can see how it could be so emotional. The police are supposed to be the ones that serving and protecting, and someone you can confide in, and someone that would help you. And then when you are threatened and pulled over, racially profiled with a gun to your head, where you think you might die, and someone of your own race, I mean, I can see why it all bubbled to the surface for Trey. So if you want to get to the final scene, climatic scene at the end, where they hear the gang pull up and Ricky and Trey are together, and they hear the car, and then Ricky says, split up. And we always ask ourselves, like you said, this kind of movie is pretty airtight. But the one thing I do question is, like, Ricky has to stop to pee. He also has to do his lottery scratch off tickets. And I'm like, oh man, but
Yeah, that was like poor timing on his part. So bad. Like,
yeah,
does someone really react like that?
yeah. I'm like, no, Ricky had the running back skills, and I'm wondering why he actually thought to split up. I was wondering maybe he thought that Trey would slow him down. I'm not sure. So there's a lot to question about that final scene. But obviously they had to get Ricky was isolated and Trey in another direction, unfortunately. And then Ricky's gunned down. The dramatic like slow-mo scene where Trey's shouting out Ricky's name.
Yeah.
And to further add drama, it's not like everything ends there. They actually bring the body home all bloodied and shot, put him on the couch, and then you see Ricky and Doughboy's mother losing her mind, obviously, but then again, like I said, blaming Doughboy, hitting him and blaming, and it all culminates in that. Trey then goes home and gets his gun, and then Furious demands the gun, and the huge emotional hug. And then there's the retribution where Doughboy, Dookie, and Monster go find the gang that killed Ricky. Trey actually asked to be dropped off before they got to them, and they do end up, gunning down the gang members that had killed Ricky.
Yeah, it got real. And Trey came to the conclusion that he's definitely not cut out for that, which was actually good that he realized, instead of potentially ruining his life in that situation, had it gone a different kind of way. And which was actually good is that when he asked to let out of the car, there was no pressure for them to make a mistake, because they knew that he shouldn't have been there. So they just let him go.
Trey, again, his future would have been jeopardized as well. And I do like the kind of epilogue where they do show you that Trey then does go on to Morehouse College, and his girlfriend Brandy goes to Spelman. So they're still both local, and they can continue with their relationship. Unfortunately, like they said, Doughboy was killed a couple weeks later by the other members of the gang, I'm sure. One other thing I didn't mention was interesting. So Ricky being recruited by USC, and the recruiter comes to the home, and outside the front porch, there's a lot of chaos, a lot of cursing and stuff like that. And the recruiter was kind of like unfazed by it. And what did it kind of turn him off, though, is Ricky's child runs out. So Ricky has a child, and they fast forward, he closes his laptop or whatever. But what makes it even more tragic is that obviously, he had the son, and he was gunned down, and it does reveal at the end that he did pass I think it was the SATs. He had just met the requirement by like 10 points. So he would have received a scholarship and gotten out.
Yeah. So many occurrences of things like that happening, where there's the potential for someone to get out and you don't, because of situations like this. I mean, we saw something similar almost occur in Above the Rim. Yeah. We saw a situation like that almost occur when he was going to get a scholarship. He could have been gunned down on a basketball court.
Yeah, Georgetown in that case. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very believable, realistic. Like you said, these instances happen. Some gone down all the time. A lot of these athletes that come from the inner city and they live in surrounded by the gang violence. This is lifestyle, and that's their only ticket out. That is really the only ticket, is to get that scholarship, and sometimes tragic results occur. So, yeah, it's a cautionary tale, and just well done by Singleton here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thumbs up.
How did you guys enjoy the music?
I mean, the soundtrack's great. I didn't own it, but it's a great soundtrack.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I definitely love this soundtrack. It's a good one. Really good.
It featured Ice Cube, obviously, Too Short, Compton's Most Wanted, Tony.
Yo-Yo was in it and in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 Live Crew, even. Main Source, Chubb Rock, one of my favorites. Quincy Jones, Septembro.
Lonely Love was in this too.
Yeah. Great soundtrack. So,
Yeah, great soundtrack.
could this movie be made today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the subject matter is still relevant, much like it was Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on this podcast, but it'd be interesting to see how current technology would impact the story. What the cell phones do for us in this. I don't think it really mattered that much. There was old cordless phones, and Brandy had an Apple IIc computer. Like, I had an Apple IIc computer. I was like, hey, I got that computer. I have that meme of Leonardo DiCaprio like pointing at the TV. Yeah, I don't know. It could be made today, but boy, could anyone top the original? I don't know. That would be really hard.
Yeah, it'd be really hard to top the original.
I don't want to see this rebooted at all. This is so perfect.
Yeah, you can make another movie based on it, but call it something else.
I got to admit, I did listen to the Rewatchables podcast on this, which is done by The Ringer. They talk for quite a while on a lot of movies. And they were saying, well, if someone had this concept today, it would be like a Netflix series, like a 10-part, because there could be a lot of the backstory. And I could see something like that, maybe.
I agree. Yeah. There's really rich. Like, these characters all had rich backstories to them. And like, you could have had a whole series on Furious Styles, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can do a prequel, like how did Furious Styles grow up? What was his upbringing like? And then show him, what were the challenges he faced in the military and what caused him to join and then to leave. And there's a lot to it.
It could be like Gotham. If you ever watched the series Gotham, when they show the backstory of Commissioner Gordon, really well done. I feel like it'd be like that.
Yeah. You almost regret not seeing more of Ricky's football highlights, because that one piece of film, he was explosive. He predated Reggie Bush.
He was the original Reggie Bush.
He was. Yeah.
Later day OJ Simpson.
Right. The U.S. Marcus Allen. Yeah.
I think the Marcus Allen.
They churned out a lot of stud running backs. Ricky could have been one of them. Yeah, so why don't we do our final rating? This is kind of a no-brainer, but let's go around the room here. Boogie, bring that funky flick back. Bring that funky flick back, or leave it in the vault.
Bring that funky flick back. It's a classic. This movie's
Dino, right?
Bring this funky flick back. It's outstanding.
Yes, bring this funky flick back. Amazing work.
Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and Dino Wright. Theme music by Boogie. Check us out on TikTok and Instagram at Hip Hop Movie Club. On the next episode of the Hip Hop Movie Club podcast, your HHMCs will review Juice, starring Tupac Shakur. It drops in 2 weeks. Subscribe today in your favorite podcast app and you won't miss it. Shout out to you listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
And remember, don't hate, anticipate.
Shout out to Brain Freeze Trivia in the Lehigh Valley. Check out the Instagram, brain_freeze_trivia_time. That's Brain Freeze Trivia time on Instagram.